And we're live. Welcome back to another episode of the Wheelie Podcast, everyone. I'm your host, Micah Toll, and I'm joined again by Electrek's Seth Weintraub. How's it going over there, Seth? You ready to
I'm
rock and roll?
I'm ready to go.
Let's do it. We've got a bunch of interesting stories this week, a lot of them coming to us from halfway around the world. We've got new e bikes from Pedego. We've got an interesting new trend in e bike batteries using potted compounds for safety. We've been doing some visits in Asia, so we checked out Yadea's factory. We also got a chance to take a run on the new Gogoro Pulse electric scooter. Gogoro's also got another new electric scooter on the lower end. We've got our first Bosch-powered e-bikes hitting the Taiwanese market, something that I didn't even know they weren't there, and more. So where are we starting this week, Seth?
All right, this is one I know dearly because I'm reviewing one of their bikes now. Pedego launches 3 new groundbreaking e-bikes, including Moto, Cargo, and Trike.
Yeah, this is a big launch for Pedego. I mean, the company's been around for, well over a decade, so they've got a lot of bikes, but these are sort of three new areas with very new styles of bikes. So the first is the Pedego Moto. It's very much like sort of, I would describe it as Juiced Scorpion-esque in that it's not, like a clone, but it's got that step through styling. They do some unique things. They've got the battery located differently. They've got sort of still a tubular bike frame kind of setup, so it feels a little more bike like than motorcycle like, but it's got undeniably moto styling, especially with the dual coilover rear shocks. So that's very much sort of like a motorcycle inspired bike. Definitely hit the nail on the head with the Moto name. The next one is the company's, I believe this is their first long tail cargo bike, if I'm not mistaken. It is aptly named the Pedego Cargo, and it is just the way it's described. It's a very stretched long tail cargo bike designed for both passengers and cargo hauling. But Pedego did some neat things here. They've added a few features that I've personally never seen before. Those running boards fold up, which makes it a lot more streamlined. So when you're not carrying cargo, you don't have those really wide running boards in back that I would sometimes like catch on posts and bollards and things if I forget how wide I am in the back there. So some interesting things that they've done there to sort of separate from some of the other cargo bikes. We've seen a few electric cargo bikes that have these built-in storage areas like they have. It's kind of like a storage bag behind the down tube. I'm sorry, the seat post, but it's different than we've seen before. And then the last new model that they've got is the Trike, again, aptly named as the Pedego Trike. And it is a fairly typical styling of a Delta Trike. So you've got the two rear wheels and a single front wheel, but it comes with a very large sort of, I would call it like a Rubbermaid style tote in back. So, like a big plastic bucket as opposed to your traditional metal wireframe basket that we see on most of these trikes, which to me I feel like is a lot more usable because you can already toss small things in there and not have them, falling through. So that's pretty neat to see. Other than that, it's generally, a lot more similar, I would say, to other trikes out there than the differences we saw on the Moto and on the Cargo. There's only so many ways you can build a Delta trike, but it does take advantage of a lot of Pedego's technology that you don't really see firsthand. Like they've got this new sort of like two-pronged approach, I guess, to pedal assist, where they call it cadence based and torque based. I don't think it's an actual torque sensor, if I'm not mistaken, but basically it's two different profiles for how they draw the power and so how it responds for you. So there's a few things that are definitely Pedego specific on here, but still it's it fits the class of a lot of these new e-trikes that we've started seeing pop up. In terms of power, I think all of these bikes are 750 watts. They do have different speeds though. The Trike is limited to 15 miles an hour, while the Moto and the Cargo come out of the box at 20 miles an hour, but they are unlockable for higher speeds. The interesting thing, though, is we've already got some experience with Seth working on the Moto reviews. So, do you have any words of wisdom so far from your miles you've put on it?
Yeah, I mean, so you mentioned it's a little bit Scorpion-esque, and it is from appearances, but it's actually a lot bigger. Like, so you can see that seat is a little bit more like the Scrambler, but it's they have foot pegs built in. There, I don't know if you can make those out from if you're watching. Um, all around a very solid bike. It is, they say unlockable, but you just go into the screen and say, I want to do uh, class 3, 28 miles per hour. The thing is, though, this is a big bike. Like it's like substantially bigger than like the juice bikes we were talking about, which is good. Like if you're riding two people, it feels really comfortable. The tires are just monstrous compared to the street tires that are kind of on the juice bikes. It's the gears are higher quality. It has turn signals on the back. The suspension is great. On this bike it's vertical, and the other bikes are kind of more horizontal. I don't know if that's better or worse, but it feels like the ride is really good. So the class 3 unlock is good. Like you definitely go above 20 miles per hour, but it's really hard to get this bike going 28 miles per hour. You have to pedal. Like there's no throttle above 20 miles per hour, so it is a by the rules class 3 e-bike. Whereas the other bikes are, you just throttle and you don't even have to pedal. Like sometimes those pedals are just they're just dangling in the wind there. But so yeah, this one, if you want to go above 20 miles per hour, you have to pedal. And the size of the bike, the weight of the bike, it's got almost a 1 full kilowatt hour battery. I think it's like 922 watt hours. The motor is pretty strong. It feels solid. I mean, it's pushing this big bike. It has oversized disc brakes. The motor, I think, is 85 newton meters of torque, which is solid. And a bike this size needs it. So I mean, the ride is fun. It's I put my son on the back. He loved it. He used the foot pegs. It's just it's great all around. Like it's a solid bike. People, especially larger people, will enjoy it. Um, the downside, obviously, is the $4,000 price. Like you know, you, as we always say with Pedego, you're buying the bike, but you're also buying the convenience. And it came like this bike came in a taller box, and it was like all I had to do to set it up was tighten the handlebars and screw in the pedals. It took me like 2 minutes to get this bike from the
Wow.
box to the road. Yeah, they're doing a new thing. It's kind of like Upway does with the taller box, so you can just loosen the handlebar, move it to the side, take off the pedals, and the bike is ready to go.
And could you have it sent to like a local Pedego dealer if you wanted to do it that way? Like
Yeah,
if you didn't want to,
I think that's actually the default. I think maybe I got
the
some
reviewer special.
a reviewer special, but so I can't say enough good things about this bike. Like people are gonna love it. It's very good all around. But at price point, I know you get the Pedego team behind you. You get the warranty. You get the store. There's so many cool accessories. But I have to say, like $4,000 seems like a lot for this bike. Uh,
Yeah.
and I
So do you
imagine there'll be some sales and stuff. But yeah,
so do you think there's like a certain type of rider that this is sort of more targeting then because of that higher price, but
yeah.
the
I mean,
service that comes with it?
it's gonna probably be the person that wants that, like when the brakes need to be serviced, doesn't want to get their hands dirty. um, when the gears aren't exactly hitting right, you take it to the shop. You don't have to worry about they'll tune it up, I believe, for free. Like I think if you want a hands off, like great experience beginning to end, this is the way to go. The other, the drop ship kind of companies, you're going to save, 1,000 or more. But you basically are just left hung out to dry, and a few bike shop visits are going to make that $1,000 up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point.
So I love it. I think it's a great bike. I don't know that the price is justifiable for everyone, but certainly for some people. All right, we should move on. Let's go to our next story. There's a new trend making electric bike batteries safer.
Yeah, so I didn't mention this in the previous story because now is the time. One of the coolest things about the Pedego new bikes is actually the batteries. All of those three new bikes have what are called podded batteries. What that means is that when they assemble the battery pack, they pour in a liquid resin that hardens around all of those cells, and it creates an encapsulated situation where basically you can't damage the battery cells. So, even if you try to like drive a screwdriver into the side of the pack, you're going to hit hard resin instead of the cells. If for some reason one of the cells just decides it's time to go and short circuits and wants to combust, it basically can't transfer that heat to any other cell. It can't undergo thermal runaway, and it makes this a much safer, a much more secure battery for people who want that peace of mind. When we talk about battery fires, I think it is important to point out that this is a bit, overblown, I would say, in the media, where there are millions and millions of e-bikes out there that charge perfectly fine every day. But it is important to note that when these occasionally do catch on fire, that there can be, lethal consequences. So, moving the industry forward towards potted batteries is probably one of the best methods that we currently have for increasing fire safety of these batteries, even more than UL certification. Because as we learned when on this very podcast, we talked to Luke Workman, one of the preeminent battery experts in the micromobility space, that it's pretty easy to pass UL listing with some small modifications that months or years from now won't actually hold up in the field. And so he's done autopsies on UL certified batteries that have combusted before. So the next step is this potting technology. And now that we're seeing Pedego adopt it, this is just sort of like the latest domino to fall among the big, well-known national brands. I think the biggest one in recent memory was Rad Power Bikes, who a few months ago announced that they were moving towards potted batteries. They certainly weren't the first company to do this. Luna did it a few years ago. A company in Canada called Green Technology did it a few years before that. But both of those were a little more niche companies, whereas even though they were sort of the first movers in the industry, now we've got a situation with these first followers, Rad Power Bikes, Pedego, that are playing this important role, because it's sort of the first followers that take something from being a quirky new invention to being a growing trend. And so when these companies are adopting this, it sends a message across the industry that this is the new wave of safer e-bike technology. I mean, I don't know about you, Seth, but think I could see a lot more companies following this lead now that we're seeing these major national brands do it.
Absolutely. I think, especially since, they're all getting their batteries out of China. China will say, "Oh, this is a great technology. If we can get a few more bucks from doing this, it's worth it." I feel like we'll probably see most batteries potted in this format in a few years. The only thing I think about though is like the potting material is like usually just like some sort of plastic, right?
Well, it's usually like I think a urethane resin, so it certainly looks like a plastic, but it starts as like a liquid.
And is it like, is the material like environmentally safe, or are we just talking about like, asbestos here or something?
I think it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, you probably
Okay.
wouldn't want to like drink it, but I don't think that there are any like known carcinogen issues. One thing that I'm still trying to learn more about is how it affects the recyclability, though.
Right.
It's an important aspect, because when these batteries reach their end of life, which is hopefully many years from now, generally they should be taken to recycling centers. But if the cells are encapsulated, then that raises the question of how accessible they are to recycle. I know Rad Power Bikes did say when they launched their new batteries a few months ago that they would still recycle them through their like in-house battery recycling program. I've got a question into Pedego to figure out if they are also able to take batteries back to recycle them. So I'm waiting for a little more information there. And I've also asked Rad to give us a little more detail about just how they go about recycling these encapsulated potted batteries. So hopefully, next week we'll have some more answers. This is still very new for this industry, so a lot of us are learning, and I think a lot of these companies themselves are still learning about how they handle this new technology. But it does raise that important question in my mind.
Yeah, so some of the recycling, that battery recycling we've seen from cars from companies like Redwood, they don't really. I mean, they basically put those batteries in a grinder. I don't know how that's safe too, because like theoretically, you could have a thermal event, but what they do is they just grind everything up into like dust and then centrifuge out, the different materials. I mean, they almost treat it like the dust is like mining, and they kind of just start from that. So if that's the case, then the potting thing won't be an issue. And I know, JB Straubel's the head of Redwood Materials, and he's obviously, part of Tesla, one of the founders, one of the board members currently, and was CTO for a long time. So, I think he's got a pretty good like vision to the future on recycling. As far as safety, like, if the potted batteries, eliminate the fire problem, then I think it's a big win. I think overall, like, we don't need to hear about any more battery fires. So hopefully that's something that fixes.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, let's move on. First, Bosch-powered electric bikes enter Taiwan thanks to Tern.
Yeah, I maybe I'm alone here, but I had no idea that Bosch uh, e-bikes weren't in Taiwan yet. But we just learned that Tern, who a lot of people think of as like a North American or European e-bike company because of how well they do in the market, they're actually Taiwanese, and they have just launched their own Bosch-powered e-bikes in their domestic market. Until now, you could get their other like folding e-bikes and their non-electric bikes, but they didn't have the Bosch system. And
Hmm.
so, I mean, this is a big win for both Bosch and for Tern because Taiwan is, I mean, it's like the epicenter of the bike industry, or at least the higher quality bike industry. Like more bikes and components come out of China, but all of the like good parts are known for coming out of Taiwan, and so the ones that aren't made in Europe, at least. And so, for this German mid-drive motor to have not been there, I feel like is almost an oversight on Bosch's part. But it's interesting to see them finally make it into this major market because Taiwan is very much a two-wheeled country. Now, in my experience, I've only been there once, but I did see that the country is more dominated by scooters, I would say, and motorcycles a bit, but more scooters, as in like two-wheeled sit down Vespa style scooters,
Hmm.
mopeds some people call them. And so I didn't see as many of the traditional sort of like North American or European style electric bikes. I didn't see as many turns, though I did see them there.
Hmm.
um, and so I think there's a bit of a different riding culture than you'd see in like Berlin or Amsterdam or something like that. But from what I understand, the country has been making significant improvements in the last few years towards boosting cycling in the country, and I definitely did see a lot of bike lanes in Taipei, so it did seem quite cyclable. And so, to me, this is great news because I mean, both of us have tested Tern bikes. I mean, they're just some of the best small format cargo bikes that you can find out there. And
I would
so, I
say
think
I
it's
would say pretty much the best. Like if
yeah,
somebody's asking me like price is not an object, what is the best one? I'm probably going to say Tern.
absolutely, yeah. I mean, from so many aspects too, like the quality, the innovation, the accessories. Like they've just put so much time and thought and just quality engineering behind these things. So just incredible bikes, and to finally see them enter their own domestic market is great. At least with the Bosch bikes, in addition to their others. Though I would love to get my hands on one of their non-electric BYB folding bikes. It's like sort of their take on Brompton. I don't think I have it in here, but
Was it
they're
the
non-electric folder.
the Vectron? No, that's the electric
Yeah,
folder.
that's the electric folder. They've sold their non-electric folder in Taiwan already, but yeah, it's like the size of a Brompton, but kind of cooler looking.
That's weird that they weren't in their own market, the domestic market.
Yeah,
So
well, I think the country's big push towards, like improving cycling is probably timed well with their decision to bring their Bosch bikes home.
yeah, and Bafang is a mainland Chinese brand. It's not a Taiwanese brand, right?
Right.
So maybe that's kind of why Taiwan probably has a lot of Bafang based and other Chinese motor based vehicles. So maybe
Yeah.
the premium thing is just new there. All right, let's move. We're going to go to Gogoro for a little bit. First is Gogoro's new low cost electric scooter breaks sales records, begins shipping.
Yeah, this has been a big couple weeks for Gogoro with news. One of the biggest stories was they began shipping their Jago. So they've got a number of electric scooters, but this is their new sort of entry level model. And it's still a really nice scooter. Like when you hear entry level, you think like, the cheap stuff, but like this scooter looks great. It's not as high performance. So I think it gets up to about 40 miles an hour or something like that. So very much a urban scooter. This is for getting around the city. This is not something I'll take on the highway, but it's priced at around $760 equivalent after you get the local subsidies and whatnot from government incentives. So for less than $800 in 800 US dollars equivalent, I can't believe what an amazing deal this is to get a, fully featured high tech battery swapping electric scooter. Gogoro, sometimes I forget to go over this because we talk about it so much, but if you're not familiar, Gogoro is like the swappable battery standard for two-wheeled vehicles. They've got, I think, almost 2 million batteries produced every day. They host something like 500,000 battery swaps, and so they're like the de facto standard. And so to be able to open up the market even more with this model, and what I understand is that they're really trying to focus on um, the gas scooter riders, the internal combustion scooters that have been a bit price sensitive and haven't bought some of the higher, more premium Gogoro models. That this is the one that they're trying to really break into that market with. And for such an affordable price, I can absolutely see more people starting to switch over. Like if you've got a 50 or 125cc scooter, this is just going to be a much nicer experience, in my opinion. So really cool to see them launch and start rolling out this lower cost, more entry level model, and really start to hammer away at that pretty big share of non-electric scooters. I think it's still something like 85% or so of the market there is gasoline powered scooters. So electric has a long way to go. Um,
You
you know,
said there is that Asia or China specifically or
in
Taiwan?
Taiwan
Taiwan.
specifically.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Interestingly, in China, it's like the opposite. In the cities, it's like 90 or more percent electric, largely due to, regulations that have regulated out the gas powered ones. But in Taiwan, internal combustion engine scooters still dominate. And so this is Gogoro's push to really hammer away at that segment and price something that is just going to be like, you know, like it's so budget price that like you almost can't afford not to if you're paying every month for gasoline. Oh, that's the other thing is that the plan is $7 a month for battery swapping. Like that's crazy. That's like two cups of coffee or one depending where you get it.
Right. Yeah, and
So
that's if you
yeah,
don't charge in a garage or on the street. So uh,
yeah,
I love the look of this thing. Specs wise, uh, you know, gas and electric are pretty on par right now. The other thing, like people keep saying, like it cuts emissions, and that's a huge deal. But what really kills me, like if you go to a city like Paris or um, any city really, and you get a lot of those loud, like zzzz, zzzz, like
yeah,
by you, and like you're sitting outside, you're enjoying the nice day, and just that noise, and it's so different, obviously, with electric vehicles. They make as much noise as a bike, um, so it's not just the combustion aspect, it's not just the environmental aspect, but it's also, you know, I think cities are going to start to say, look, we have better options. let's phase out the combustion. And I think Paris is actually doing something about that. Some news: I think I'm going to be in Paris, hopefully with my boys in August for the Olympics. So
Nice.
yeah, so I'm excited about that.
That's
And
awesome. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I'm gonna have a chance to see how Paris. Paris has very lofty goals. To see how Paris is doing. I know that they have a lot of stuff for the Olympics planned, so it'll be interesting. And I know that the public transport in Paris is going to be a circus during the Olympics, so it'll be nice to have some sort of wheels there that I don't have to rely entirely on public transport. Although when the public transport is working, it's great. But I just feel like with the Olympics there, it's an opportunity for strikes. You know,
Yeah, yeah, they love to to strike and protest. But I think the Paris mayors just pushed real hard for, like walkable center of Paris and,
yep,
cycling and everything. So that should be really interesting to see what it's like, and report from the ground there.
yeah, and they've also made it illegal to strike, but so
I
but that
imagine there were protests for
yeah,
that.
so I think it's going to be funny because that's just telling them that like they want to strike more when they're told it's illegal. So we'll see how it goes. All right, let's move on. Gogoro Pulse first ride testing the most high tech performance electric scooter.
Yes, so the reason I was in Taiwan recently was actually for this. I got to go out and test Gogoro's newest high performance electric scooter. So this is like the complete opposite of the Jago that we just talked about. This is a 9 kilowatt, which is like a ton for a scooter, mind you. And this is just a super, super high tech,
This is
tech forward vehicle. Not only is it a brand new look for Gogoro, they've always been this sort of like cute, bubbly, rounded electric scooter company. This is very much an aggressive, angular looking, more performance scooter type of vibe to it. But it is just so much more intense when you ride it. So I went out to this event. It was hosted on this like I guess abandoned airstrip in central Taiwan somewhere. I wasn't even sure exactly where I was when I got off a bus, but they had all these stations set up to test different aspects. So the cool thing is that I got to start on dirt, which is not an area where you normally think that scooters are going to be capable of riding. But not only does the Gogoro Pulse have a dirt mode, but it's got active traction control. And so I'm not even like a great dirt rider, but it didn't really matter because every time the thing started like slipping around, it would just correct for me, which is kind of incredible on a scooter that we think of as these normally like fairly low tech, fairly low performance vehicles. So really cool that, if you wanted to, you could take this as your weekly commuter vehicle, but on the weekends you could actually go out and you could ride trails. I mean, the suspension is amazingly good. Like you can see what I'm riding over there. It's just like the dirt on the side of an airstrip, and it's rutted out. It's dirty. There's huge gaps and divots, and the thing is just working beautifully there. The next thing that we did is a slalom test. And here, like you can see just how crazy this is a professional rider. This is not me.
I was
If
going to
you're watching
say.
the video with us, yeah, like he's literally scraping the side stand as he goes around these cones. Like I was not leaning that hard into the turns, but you can just see the performance here. So just like incredibly agile. Here I'm showing like when I ride back home, I have a GoPro scooter as well. Being agile is the most important thing for me in a city scooter. So the fact that this thing is just like incredibly agile, despite being so high performance, is key because these are really still meant for city riding. But the sort of like biggest and most impressive demonstration we got to try out was this thing called launch mode. So they set up this like drag style race strip on the runway there, and we got to test out launch mode. And this is sort of like a secret mode above the highest power mode. So you got to put in like a few different inputs, kind of like an old school Nintendo controller where there's like the secret codes to unlock something. So you do that, and you can see the whole scooter's like vibrating here. It's shaking, and it's rocking the motor back and forth to create that like high revving engine sensation. And then when you're ready to launch, you release the left lever, which is the rear brake lever, and it feels like you're popping a clutch on a motorcycle. And like it's true to form, like you just launch off. That's why it's called launch mode, and it feels insane how quickly you get up to speed on this thing. I've ridden a lot of high power motorcycles. I've done 0 to 60 in 3 seconds on motorcycles. It's crazy to get that sensation on this type of vehicle. Now it does do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. It's not that powerful, but it's wild. I saw another journalist almost slip off the back because he just wasn't expecting it to launch that powerfully. The torque is something like 270 Newton meters at the rear wheel. So you're talking about just some crazy performance here. In my opinion, probably more performance than anyone needs in a scooter, but that's not really the point when they create these high performance features. It's really more to show what it's capable of. And like, yeah, if you were sitting at a red light, you could, put this thing in launch mode and you could just fly off when the light turns green. But to me, the real takeaway message here is just the capabilities of having like one scooter that can do so many things. It can be like your normal boring commuter vehicle, and it can be your like take it canyon carving on the weekends kind of vehicle as well. Here you're getting a look at what the screen will look like. The software wasn't quite finished when we were testing it out, so I didn't get to see all of this, turn by turn navigation on the bike itself. But before it's released to the public, it'll obviously have that finished, and that 10-inch touchscreen is just going to be incredibly nice. I don't think I've ever heard of a screen that big or that nice on a scooter. It is nice that it has physical controls as well, because personally, I think touchscreens on bikes is kind of dumb. But the ability to use it if you'd like, especially for young people that just grow up without ever experiencing knobs, I guess is kind of nice. So I'm real excited about this one. It's probably not going to be coming to the US. I doubt it will be in Europe anytime soon, though. Fingers crossed that they expand to Europe because it's got a decent scooter market. Um, but even in the local domestic market, it's really reasonably priced. I think it's about $3,300 worth or so. So
Wow.
for such a high performance vehicle, that is just incredible pricing. I think it's also coming to the Philippines, if I'm not mistaken. Gogoro's already in the Philippines. They're in like a maybe 10 or so countries across Asia. So they're really expanding quite quickly, and it's great to see and test out their new highest performance model and see them really cover all their bases.
Yeah, so I have some questions. You know, 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. Is there any like lift on the front wheel? Like you don't wheelie out,
So
or
this one isn't 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. I think it's 0 to 30 in 3 seconds.
okay,
I'm just saying, like, by comparison, like, it's not that I haven't felt that kind of acceleration before. Like, I've ridden live wires, I've ridden
right,
Energicas, but to get something that feels that kind of rush here is
right.
incredible. So even for a scooter, 0 to 30, I think is the figure in 3 seconds is still incredibly powerful. It feels like it's stretching the suspension in the front. I don't think it's actually taking the tire off the ground. Um, but they did have the pro riders do some wheelies. So I think that if you unlock the whatever limits they have in there for like anti wheelie, it probably would. In fact, when they did the wheelie demonstration, the first time it didn't work, and then they all like kind of huddled around the screen and like pushed a bunch of buttons, and then it worked. So I think they were like removing some of the protections to make the
Right.
wheelie work.
Like traction control and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, so $3,300. I mean, that's $700 less than the Moto, and this thing can go on the freeway. Um, so that seems like a crazy price for something like this.
Yeah, I mean, there are some ways they get there. For one, I think that includes, government subsidies. Two, you're not buying the batteries. Those are still
Right.
owned by Gogoro.
That's
So
true.
that's a great way that they can, save money on these things. And the different markets. So, if they sold it in the US, it would probably be significantly more. I think my Gogoro costs twice as much in Tel Aviv as it did locally in Taiwan. The part of that is we have really high import taxes here. So who knows what it would cost, in real US dollars if it was imported.
Yeah, it still looks like a fun bike, and Gogoro loves you and the reviews that we do for them. Why? I mean, obviously our audience is global, but why do you think we're based in the U.S.? Do you think that they're thinking about entering our markets, or is it just kind of
So They're very gung ho on international expansion. I can't see them entering the US anytime soon just because of the volume of motorcycle and scooter riders. I could maybe see them looking at specific European markets because for their model to make sense, they need a lot of people turning over these batteries. Like that's the only way that it can sort of be economical.
Right.
And so, outside of like a single US city that would have like really high motorcycle usage, like maybe somewhere in California, like I just can't see it fitting the US just yet. But there are a lot of European cities where I could see them being successful. So,
Including Paris.
um, maybe, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, the Europe is a very different two-wheeled climate than the US. The
Right.
US, it's like you get a motorcycle to, like feel young and be a rebel. In Europe, like you get a motorcycle to go to work. So,
Yeah.
that's where I could see them expanding into the West if they are. Now they did move into I think it was Colombia and one other South American country. So they have come to the Americas, just not the northern part of America.
Right. And without the charging or the battery swapping network, it would be a lot less interesting to get one of these.
Yeah, and I think I mean I don't really know, I haven't been able to take a look in their books, but I'm guessing that you got a little bit of like the razor and the blade model here that they're not trying to make a ton of money on their scooters themselves. They're really offering their service for battery swapping. So I wouldn't see them likely to just like, enter the US and say, we'll sell scooters, you can charge them yourself, because it's really kind of a package deal. And if anything, the way they present themselves is that they're like a battery company or really an energy company. Like they're a distributed energy company that happens to make scooters.
Hmm. All right. Love to see that. Hope we can get some stateside at some point. And last but not least, Yadea factory tour: the surprises I found at the world's largest electric vehicle maker. Well, that's certainly a largest electric vehicle maker is a big news, because I think a lot of people think Tesla or BYD are the biggest automakers.
Yeah, and I had no idea the scale here. So like for comparison, I think Tesla was at like 1.6 or 1.8 million vehicles last year, for all of 2023, something like that. Yadea produced 16 million
Wow.
electric vehicles. Now they have fewer wheels, so these
How
are, scooters and
many wheels did they
trikes.
produce?
But even per wheel, they've got it. So it takes a lot less energy and a lot less resources to produce one of these vehicles. But that's kind of the point. Like these are less energy intensive vehicles, and that's why they're so popular all over the world, or in the rest of the world, I should say.
That's how to
Um,
use.
yes, and so this was just an incredible chance to visit this company and see how these are produced. For one thing, like I went into this a lot more open-minded than I feel like a lot of Westerners are about Chinese manufacturing. But even so, like my mind was blown from my preconceived notions about what goes on in a Chinese factory. Like if you're watching here with us, you're going to see just a super high-tech factory, so much automation, um, and just so much stuff done in-house. Their own injection molding machines, their own automated assembly, even on the lines where they've got actual people working on assembly lines assembling scooters. They've got so much automation built into it where there are these like hanging parts trays that run through the ceiling on these like just like ceiling mounted roller coasters, and then they lower down right where those parts are needed on the assembly line automatically. And so workers just like turn around and there's just like an elevator roller coaster thing that gives them their part, and then it goes back up into the ceiling when vehicles are finished, to move between different buildings in this complex, which by the way the complex is like 1,000 acres or something. There are these like sky bridges that connect buildings, and these scooters just get like hoisted on these automated like roller coasters, and they just get like moved between buildings through these sky bridges automatically, so they never go outside. If it's raining or snowing, they never get wet, so they move from like assembly to painting to inspection, all through these sky bridges. There's just like so many quality inspection points along the way. Here you're seeing like the end of line inspections, but all along the way there are quality inspections. basically like everything that I thought going into this was just blew my mind. Even the care for the workers. So um, the workers at each like assembly station, they've got their own like air conditioning and fans set up so they can like control their surrounding temperature. For a lot of the components, they're done at adjustable heights. So like the three wheelers, they mount a lot of the parts when they're hanging, like the axles and stuff, so they don't actually have to like get on the ground and work under the vehicles. They can work at like safe, comfortable heights. And a lot of the heavy jobs, like the welding and stuff, here, like the sheet metal folding, is automated with robots. So a lot of these tasks are, taken out of human hands and put in robotic hands, and the humans are now just sort of like supervising the machines to make sure it doesn't get caught up or anything. So really cool to just see like how much effort is put into like sort of worker comfort optimization, I would say. So it's not the image that I think a lot of us have in our minds of like a sweatshop or something. Like these are all look like super happy, comfortable people. There's even in the middle of one of these factories or one of the buildings in the factory, there was a giant soccer field where like if they want to take a break in the middle of the day, it's like they have their own field inside of a factory building. So a lot of cool stuff to see. Oh, this is the environmental protection system that like filters all of the water and the gas and emissions that come out of the factory so that they're not, pumping toxins into the air. So again, like a lot of these like preconceived notions that you think of these, big dirty industry kind of thing, like that wasn't what I saw at all. The cool thing here is the second half of the day I got to spend testing vehicles. So here you see a lot of different vehicles they had set up for me. These are the mopeds that I got to take through the sort of like torture test course, which they use to like spot inspect vehicles. So as vehicles come off the end of the line, they take a few of each batch and they run them through all these simulated road tests. You've got like flooded roads, you got a washboard section here, you've got a super steep incline. Then on the other side, you've got the braking, or this one had regen. So here I was just doing regen the whole way down. You've got cobblestones. This will be very Paris-like. And then you got like 20 speed bumps in a row, which sounds like a HOA's like
Yeah.
paradise. Um, but it wasn't just mopeds. So here they've got these really nice scooters, which you think like what is left to innovate in scooters, but they've got incredible suspension here. It's dual swing arm suspension. So you can see like my feet almost don't move as I go over big divots in the road. This one is a super lightweight model, but still it's got that same really nice elastomer dual swing arm suspension. This model is like 500 or $600 too. So like super lightweight full suspension scooter, really nice. But to me, like the e-bikes and the scooters and the mopeds and the trikes, like there's just so much variation in what they produce, and yet it's all done so well. Like so much emphasis on quality control, so much emphasis on the way production runs, the automation. Like just a really surprising visit for me to see so much more than I expected. Now, obviously, not every Chinese factory is like this. There's still a lot of manual labor. Not everyone gets conditions as nice as this, but to see what's sort of like the peak of electric vehicle production in terms of size and scale really shows you that like, the majority of these vehicles that are coming out, they're coming from these quality factories. This isn't, like a bunch of, forced labor, heaven forbid, or something like that. Again, not that, that stuff isn't out there, but from what I saw from these kind of leading companies, it's just incredibly well thought out.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the scale is like unbelievable to me. I just see these buildings in the background that just go to like infinity.
Yeah,
But I'm also kind of, I don't want to say I'm skeptical, but I'm just like, well, they probably put on a good show for you. Maybe they have like, the back factory where like the real work gets done, and it's slave labor from years, or I'm just saying like, um, I think you probably got a, you know, I don't want to say a washed that up version, but I'm sure they put on their best face for you.
definitely.
And it
Like, and if
looked
there's something they don't want me to see, like I certainly wouldn't have seen it.
right, right. But these vehicles look great. I love to see it, and of course, when you scale that big, you can eliminate some of the costs and pass the cost reduction on to consumers. And who knows if the Chinese government is subsidizing some of that or what? But there's a lot to like here. I think it's you know obviously we like these kind of vehicles, no matter where they come from. So I'm happy to see it. And your video looks great. I think we're seeing parts of it here on the video version of the podcast, but you guys should go check it out because Mike has got 16 minutes of testing two-wheelers in China. So make sure you go and check that out. And that's our last story, but we're going to go ahead and look at the comments right now. Hello, is there anyone out there? Yes. Ray Livergood said, I might have missed this in the conversation, but do they ride stand-up scooters much? And that was 9 minutes in, so that was probably...
I think that was in Taiwan that when we were talking about the Bosch bikes entering and how
Okay.
they're not super into cycling the way Europe is. If I'm not mistaken, let me know, Ray. But yeah, in terms of Taiwan, I did not see very many stand-up scooters. I was pretty surprised about that as well. Stand-up scooters really seem to be very region specific. Like in Paris, they're like the national vehicle, but then in a lot of cities and countries, they're just missing.
Yeah. All right. Jose says, I wanted to try the Gogoro, but you needed a Taiwan phone number to register. They need something for tourists. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's absolutely right. They do have GoShare, which is basically a sort of like Lime bikes, but with Gogoro scooters, and it's actually run by Gogoro. The problem is, yeah, you can't do it without a local phone number. So
I wonder if that's
it's
how they
not
like
great.
register people, or they know how people are using the bikes.
Yeah, and so I agree that it would be great if there was a way for tourists to be able to do this. I actually borrowed a couple Gogoro scooters while I was there, but I had to basically like use the account of one of the Gogoro employees and like use
Hmm.
their key. They, which is actually kind of cool because they have the Apple Wallet key. So she was just able to like send me the key to my iPhone,
Oh,
but I was
nice.
basically like sort of stealing her account, I think.
Yeah. All right. Moving on. Bafang is a Chinese mainland brand. Yeah, we were asking if they were Taiwan based or not. Ray Living, good to know that China is pushing electric so hard, clean air. And, as we said before, it's not just clean air. It's a little bit quiet, a lot quieter, smoother, less vibration. Just, like the background noise of combustion engines, just like it wears on you. So good in all respects. Jose also says protesting is an Olympic sport for the French. I'm not going to comment on that, but it does seem to be a bigger thing there. Jose also says you can humble a Hellcat with the fast Gogoro. I don't know about that, but 3 seconds to 30, it seems plenty fast. Stay connected with EVs is surprised and says, wow, $3,300 for that thing. I am also kind of surprised. That seems like a crazy price. And we
Yeah.
talked about why, the battery being, external and, just a lot of, tax stuff there. Fat Freddy's cat enjoyed the video. Okay. And thanks for doing these. Well, thank you, Fat Freddy's cat. That's all for today.
Yeah, definitely. And just to note, we're going to have several more of those Chinese factory visits coming up over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So stay tuned for those videos and articles as well.
As well as the Pedego Moto review, I should probably have out within a week.
Absolutely, yeah. And after the teaser from this week, I'm excited to see like the full in-depth review there. So we've got a lot of cool content coming out, both written and video. So make sure you check out the site and the YouTube channel. But I think that's all for this week. So thank you guys very much for tuning in. We'll be back here in another 2 weeks with another episode.